Welcome to Creation in the 21st Century. I'm your host, Carl Baugh, founder and director of the Creation Evidence Museum in Glen Rose, Texas. We have a program for you today with an incredibly qualified guest, and the title of the program is Evolution Expelled. Now, what do we mean by that? And our guest, an eminent scholar, is going to verify that from the halls of academic fact, evolution has been expelled. If we talk about evolution from the concept of microvariation within genetic boundary, that is no problem whatsoever. That has been observed in field excavations, that has been observed in laboratory experiments. In principle, it is correct. But as we reshuffle the genetic information, we lose viability, but we certainly get variation, but all within the genetic information that's already in place. If, however, by evolution, we mean, as the common concept is expressed and propagandized, if we mean lower life forms developing gradually or by punctuated rapid equilibria until we go from slime to PhD or crustaceans to primates, if we mean by evolution a graduation with an increase in genetic information that has never been observed in the fossil record, all the fossil record demonstrates is a fixity of kinds and variation that were all present simultaneously. It has never been observed in the actual laboratory experiments because we cannot increase the genetic information. We can vary it, but we lose viability. My guest today is one of our most qualified guests that I've had over the years, and periodically he is asked to return because he has an incredible message to deliver. My guest is Dr. Joseph Mastropalo. Dr. Mastropalo, it's a delight to have you back on the telecast again today.
It's my pleasure to be here, Dr. Baugh.
You have a background in biology and kinesiology, and you're a credentialed scholar. Tell us what kinesiology might be.
Biomechanics and physiology of the human, mainly. Experimental animals, secondarily.
Well, to show that you are eminently qualified, in fact, I don't think you have anyone better qualified than are you, to show that you are, there was an experiment run called the Gossamer Albatross, and I watched it decades ago. I watched it with fixity of intent. Who was the lead scientist and designer on that experiment?
I blush to say I was.
Yes, you were. Yes, you were. And it demonstrated what?
It demonstrated that what people had said was impossible to achieve physiologically, that is to fly by one's own power as a human being, which is just barely possible theoretically, that it could not be done because teams all over the world had been trying for 16 years in vain, had not succeeded. They said it couldn't be done. We did it by applying a new theory which reconfigured the muscle cell. So with these new reconfigured muscle cells in the pilot engine, the prize was won.
Marvelous. And the prize was how much money?
50,000 English pounds.
That was a lot of money. How many years ago?
About 30 years ago.
And the pilot was the engine.
Correct.
And you have a photograph in training, in preparation. You actually were better qualified than the younger pilot who flew it in many respects.
Mostly in age. I was double his age.
But you were in extremely good health.
I was able to put out enough power to fly. This is actually me in the aircraft, so it proves that I had the power to fly. And had he failed, I could have taken his place and possibly won the prize.
This is marvelous. This is you, the scientific designer and kinesiologist and head of the scientific nature of the venture, actually flying the Gossamer Albatross. Now, he flew it by your training and supervision over the English Channel, is that right?
Well, this was the condor, which flew the figure 8 with pylons 1 mile apart. Then this was the albatross, which here is setting a world's record by flying for more than an hour. I took this photograph. It's Brian Allen who is flying it. And here's Brian Allen training on the bicycle ergometer, the training program that I gave him to reconfigure his muscles so that he could win the prize. And here he is flying across the English Channel.
Which is how many miles?
Minimum 22 miles, but practically 30 miles because the navigation wasn't perfect.
And when he got to the other side, you told us before, he was totally exhausted but made it.
Yes, Dr. McCready asked me 2 days before he flew how long could he last, because it was known there would be headwinds from as far away as 6 miles off the coast of France. This was going to be from the English to the French coast. And he asked, how long can he last? I went to the data from the bicycle ergometry, and I calculated that he should be able to last 170 minutes with the power necessary to fly. He landed in 169 minutes, and we broke open the canopy. He fell out. He said he wasn't able to go any further.
And he didn't need to go any further. And you had calculated it precisely. And so you had the obstacles. You had your opposition in a wind that increased the peril factor.
Yes.
Now that you have been established in the minds of this audience as a credentialed professional in the area of biochemistry, in the area of biology, which you studied, of course, and majored in, and the reflex and response of the human physiology, plus living systems, when you performed this incredible feat, or were responsible for the performance of this incredible feat, I believe you were an evolutionist at that time. Is that correct?
Yes, I was.
But you're not an evolutionist at this time.
No, I'm not.
We want to know why and what the implications are. In fact, let's introduce the audience to the principle that has imperiled the lives with a counter headwind, as if we might take from the data we just learned. We have, with a counter headwind, imperiled the lives of countless individuals over long centuries of time with a theory of naturalism. In the past, I held to this theory. In the past, you held to this theory. But we're going to see before this program is over why you have abandoned that theory, what the repercussions are, and what the advice might be to this audience. That theory is, of course, naturalistic evolution. You and I bought into it decades ago. The concept that everything originated naturalistically and progressed randomly according to naturalistic tendencies, where rather simple compounds and characters in the sea and the slime progress to more complicated compounds and characters or individuals or living systems, and bifurcation into plants and animals, and then the introduction of the Mesozoic era, the age of the reptiles, and the introduction of the age of the mammals, and finally presenting as the supreme, premier example of evolution, the mind of man. And that is the naturalistic theory, in a nutshell, that the universe produced us, requiring no designer, no supernatural agent, and no accountability. But you, Dr. Mastropaolo, have engineered an incredible research program questioning if naturalistic evolution is viable. Would you take us through that program?
I would be glad to, Dr. Baugh. I'd like to start here, well, perhaps here. Are we the stewards or are we the animals? If evolution is true, then we're the animals.
Yes.
If evolution is not true, then we are the stewards. We are not the animals.
Yes.
Now, here is what the ancient Greeks observed. On a milkweed leaf, which had nothing on it, suddenly appears a caterpillar. Where did it come from? Their answer was from Gaia, the goddess of the earth, which gave the vitalism through the plant to the spontaneous generation of this worm-like organism. And what did the organism do? It's easy to observe. It spun itself into a chrysalis. What came out? A butterfly. What did they say? They said, this caterpillar evolved into a butterfly.
And without any guidance or supernatural manual to give them counsel, they saw an encapsulation of a transformation of living systems. So we might give them a bit of excuse for adopting that concept.
We might say they were imperfect observers because they didn't notice on the underneath side of the milkweed leaf there was that little bump which was only a millimeter long.
And they had no microscopes?
They had no microscopes. They tried to take it off with their fingernails. They couldn't because it was glued on with a glue stronger than the structure of the egg.
Marvelous.
Even with water, they weren't able to wash it off, so they assumed it was a blemish on the leaf, a natural blemish on the leaf. And they gave all the credit to Gaia, which was the personification of the Mother Earth,
yes,
which gave the vitalism,
energy and vitalism.
Gave all the vitalism, which spontaneously generated and evolved these organisms. So that then is Darwin's goddess. I know that you know of the book that was recently published, Darwin's God. There is no Darwin's God.
That's correct.
There is only Darwin's goddess, and it's Gaia.
Yes.
Now, when we look at the more perfect observation, which was made by Francesco Redi in 1668, what he discovered was the egg on the underneath side of the leaf laid by a female butterfly,
yes, the
which
living
was
organism.
Exactly the same as the butterfly that hatched from the chrysalis.
Yes.
No spontaneous generation, no evolution, strictly a reproductive process.
That's right.
With what we might say are two eggs. The first egg, the caterpillar. Second egg, the butterfly. Butterfly to butterfly.
Absolutely. So the transformation is a part of the design where the genetic information was already there.
No Gaia, no spontaneous generation, no evolution, and the archetype scientist, Francesco Redi, who used a fine microscope for his studies. And he was the one that said, it is vain to believe unless confirmed by experiment.
Yes. Yes.
That's the beginning of science.
So actually, he expelled evolution from its posture as factual observation. He expelled evolution.
He did. And that was 3.4 centuries ago. And here's what he gave for his testimony on what was believed before 1668. And I'll just mention the last part. Not only does the earth possess this occult power, but that it is possessed by all animals, living and dead, also by all things produced from the earth, and finally by those which are about to decay and return to dust. That's what they believed. That's what they taught.
Had believed to that point, but with his microscope, he expelled that concept
completely.
As a factual basis.
Completely.
Now
here what we have is the inventor of evolution, which was Anaximander. And he said the earth started lifeless. It spontaneously generated through Gaia the first organisms which struggled amongst themselves and made higher organisms. The same struggle, he said, devolved them back to lifelessness, and the cycle would continue. Gaia was the center.
Yes,
here's
vitalism, Earth's natural energies.
And here's what he said. At first, the Earth was a molten primeval planet. You'll find that in present-day biology textbooks.
Yes,
in
it's central.
The chapters on evolution. He said there was a primitive fluid that spawned life. They call it the, what do they call it? The primeval soup?
Yes.
That's in the biology textbooks. The early life was in the sea. Then terrestrial plants and animals. Our ancestors were fish. There's actually a whole book on that. Struggle exterminated inferior life.
Survival of the fittest?
The feather, the homologue of the fish's scale, is still in the biology books. Human embryo, like the chick embryo, has been expanded in the biology textbooks. That expansion was based on plagiarized drawings, which were subsequently doctored or modified to make, they were fabricated to make it look like there was an evolutionary sequence. It was a complete fraud.
In fact, Ernst Haeckel, by his own university, was brought before trial and was expelled, condemned.
Found guilty.
Found guilty.
Without a doubt. Soma, which means body seeds, changed by the environment, they're inherited in our evolution's mechanism, and that means that if I, as a parent, lost a finger, then the subsequent children would be born without that finger. And of course, that's been false, known to be false for thousands of years.
Absolutely. So it has been expelled, yet the concept has held on because of its naturalistic explanation without giving an account to a supernatural creator, a divine creator.
You know what we should do? We should look in the biology textbooks, because if you do, in the chapters on evolution, you will not find one footnote to a science journal.
Now that's astounding. You know, you and I, Joseph, you and I publish, and we are required by peer review and by journalistic honesty to document. I've published books, you've published books. You and I have hundreds of documentary references in our books. We're required to do so, to go back to the source. Yet, in the very textbooks, are you saying, in the very textbooks that our children use as foundationary for the principal decisions of life origins, there are no technical references?
None whatsoever, and if you look in the back of the book for the list of references, there are none. Now, if you think that was omitted because they didn't have time, think again, because you will find a list, in some cases more than 1,000, to the pictures. The pictures.
The pictures.
But not the science. So what they're putting out for current-day biology textbooks are coffee table picture books.
This needs to be broadcast around the world. Dr. Mastropalo, you are exposing a hoax that has been expelled from the halls of fact and is relegated to a guess and a hypothesis, not even a good theory, but now in many of those same texts, it is presented as factual information, as if it were proved and accepted in full peer review by the academic community, which is not the case. You have challenged that. What are all these photos doing?
Well, I wanted to show here that there are consequences, academic consequences, immediately that are taking place between 4th and 12th grade. Science achievement is suppressed 50%, and that's because the students have been told that the universe is the complete reverse of what it actually is in class. But when they go out of class, they are bound to see that what they've been taught is a complete fabrication.
So within their minds, there's a frustrative attitude and yet a negative response to scientific things because they can't believe what's called science.
They lose confidence in their science teachers, and they lose confidence in the whole subject of science, and the result is this decline in their scientific achievement. Now, the proof of this pudding is that we cannot graduate scientists into public life where they can become employed as scientists. In now, at Silicon Valley alone, that's only that one community just on the outskirts of San Jose, there are 1,400 foreign scientists employed because they cannot find American scientists to fill those positions.
Isn't that tragic?
It is.
And it goes back to the classroom and the mandated concept of naturalistic humanism, evolution.
So what I did was I noticed that there were no references. I couldn't find any evidence. So I asked these leading evolutionists in the world. And the last time I was here, I may have mentioned that we had asked more than 57.
Correct.
Now it's more than 150.
More than 150 leading evolutionary scholars. What did you ask them?
I asked them if they had any evidence to support evolution. And I gave them a counterclaim. I said, you do not have, because evolution is a gea-religion, it's based on superstition,
yes.
There is absolutely no science behind it. Now, they had a claim that they had to answer. They had, as choices, contend against that claim, disavow evolution, or go on the list as a defaulter, because they did not defend themselves
right.
against the claim. They all defaulted.
They all defaulted.
So they're on the list.
Here we have Eugenie Scott, head of the National Science Educational Program, Richard Dawkins, the world's best-known atheist of this day, even Stephen Hawking. These are major names, and you contacted all of them. They gave no response to actually give evidence supporting evolution.
Not a single one.
And I believe you have gone beyond that.
We actually went to the organizations making public statements in support of evolution. Last time I was here, there were 19 of them. Now there are more than 40
that you have approached.
Of these organizations. They include the Nobel Prize Assembly.
I noticed that.
They include the American Civil Liberties Union, National Center for Science Education.
With Eugenie Scott?
Yes, and the Smithsonian, departments of evolutionary biology in various universities. If they have evolution in their name, they should have some evidence.
And
they
you
don't.
received no response to produce evidence.
And that involves 363,000 evolutionists by their organizations.
By their organizations. In these last moments, what do we have here in this Superior Court?
Well, the challenge that I gave them was the claim that they have no evidence, and that I did have evidence,
yes,
which would prove that evolution is not correct, it's not science. I put up here, let's do it in the Superior Court.
Certainly.
With a mini-trial kind of format, and you will win a $10,000 prize, and you may win it repeatedly, as many times as you want.
As long as you can bring actual evidence supporting macroevolution.
Yes, and insofar as I'm concerned, because I'll be the only person on the other side, do I have science? Yes, I do.
Certainly, you
am
have
I
scientific
ready?
credentials.
Am I ready to contend? Yes, I am. Do I have my $10,000 entry fee ready? I certainly do. Will I go for it as many times as you go for it, the evolutionists? Certainly I will. And they still won't come forward. Now, what that tells us is that we have no option left except to expel evolution by legislative means. Now, these are the losing strategies. These are the winning strategies. Let's attack evolution itself, not put up something in contention with it. These are the outlaw public schools. They violate the Education Code, the First Amendment. They fire people and remove them when we convince them
yes,
that evolution is incorrect. And so what we find is that we have to use legislative strategies.
And in these closing moments, it has become increasingly aware, we have become increasingly aware of the facts involved in the case. Here is a champion, a leader, who has contacted the world's leading evolutionary organizations, challenging them to present even a single iota of information, certified information, that would verify evolution in any of the supposed steps. Yet, none have been willing to even answer his challenge. Well, by default, they've admitted that they have no real evidence. That's the reason in the public forum, evolution holds an imperial position, not an empirical position. An empirical position means it is put to the stringent test experimentally, observationally, and it has been put to those tests and has never been demonstrated as being viable. So the alternative is it has been held in the educational community as the only ball game in town, when really it is a religious philosophy and a propagandistic mechanism to support the atheistic religion with evolution as its primary tenet. In the state of Texas, there is a regulation, there's a law enacted by, the regulation enacted by the Texas School Book Committee, which states that any time a scientific concept is taught, there must be any factual evidence supporting it and any factual evidence detracting from it. In other words, its strengths and its weaknesses. But by and large, the educators have ignored that to even critique the theory of evolution. So Dr. Mastropalo and I are calling for an adherence to the laws that are on the books. And if this is followed, evolution is expelled automatically as a viable statement of fact and is shown to be propagandistic and is shown to be a religious tenet. That brings us to the real religion that is pure and undefiled, supported by scientific evidence. The scientific evidence is that all living systems were created. Like the chrysalis and the butterfly and the egg and the entire metamorphic system, the information had to be there in place. Now, there's a great information in place that Jesus Christ, the Creator, came to earth, died for you, and now wants you to receive Him. Would you pray this simple prayer? Lord Jesus, right now, I open my heart to you. Come into my heart and live. Correct my thinking, save me, and I will live for you with all my heart.
Creation in the 21st Century has been sponsored by Trinity Broadcasting Network, and only with your love gift of support can this program stay on the air. So write to Creation in the 21st Century, P.O. Box A, Santa Ana, California, 92711.
Creation in the 21st Century is a unique program on TBN combining biblical knowledge with scientific verification. Much of the information that I use on the program is available. Contact us. Just write Creation Evidence Museum, P.O. Box 309, Glen Rose, Texas 76043, or call us at 254-897-3200. We look forward to hearing from you today.